Alright, welcome to Competent Conquest, and today I'm playing a Nord list that you'll see down in the comments versus Bryan playing a Thunder Rider heavy Fanatic of War with Chosen of Conquest as his second major Anvil Wadroon list. So this is pretty interesting. This was an interesting game. There were a lot of points where things could have gone very differently, and I'm kind of excited to show it to you. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and turn it on double speed here and get to work. He doesn't have any lights in his army, so I just kind of don't build a stack and deploy a whole bunch of stuff. I make sure that I get the raiders into reasonable charge range of that objective. Objective's height 2, so I kind of hem and haw about this a lot. And I end up just like putting the Stalkers right in front of the raiders and figure it's not that big of a deal, but I really want to make sure that I'm able to shoot. And you can see there, they're not going to be in half range, so I end up just leapfrogging the raiders and hoping I can charge the objective with the raiders next turn, and hopefully with a charge, impact, clash, plus volley, be able to kill it and get it off the table. All three of my Fenrir come in, obviously, because they have flank. I select trolls, and then I roll my 4 other mediums here, of which I get none, which is a little frustrating, but yeah, it's part of the game. We select one Fenrir, the one that doesn't have Flurry, and the trolls to gain Vanguard from our Shaman Warlord. Well, Bryan brings in Chosen of Conquest, and I believe 3 units of Blooded, because Tracker is a very good rule. And gives them Flank and Fiend Hunter. Bryan's over there building a stack, I'm building a stack. We're pretty good about just like not looking at it, but in the future I'm probably going to be better about actually putting them all in a stack and then organizing it from there. I think I do it later in this game, actually. So my big plan for this turn is hopefully I can get the raiders into the objective marker. I definitely make a mistake here. I was getting far too expectant of just good things happening, and the raiders failed the charge, and I didn't put the blooded before the stalkers. It didn't really matter in this case. I just, I hit enough times to do a damage to the objective marker without needing take aim. But had I thought about it, I should have just had the blooded go so that I could just take aim volleyed anyway and use the blooded to rally. I didn't do that, so the ability to fire and then charge and rely on the blooded's impacts is something I gave up the opportunity to do here because of the way I built my stack. And even though I don't think that is the correct choice, it's always good to give yourself more options. Blooded are going over there. They're going to threaten a zone. That's a pretty normal play. That's what you got to do. This is me rolling a lot of dice to shoot the objective marker. I hit it 8 times. I'm clearly going to do my 1 wound to it. Bryan does roll the saves, but it does not, in fact, save enough of them. He brings the second blooded on, kind of to pressure this midpoint a little bit. I think that this is probably a mistake deployment. The water is pretty rough for them. That objective marker is in the way. They don't have any really good tools to get rid of it, so they're not really threatening that zone very well. Even if they were to charge clash the objective, it's taking them 3 turns to kill, which is simply isn't really worth the effort. So I probably wouldn't have those blooded in that position. They're able to be shot. They're near raiders. It's just generally they don't really have a lot of value in that location. Some more Blooded moving up. These ones are significantly better. They can actually pressure both zones. It's likely that I'm going to have to go at this objective marker. His plan here is probably to pincer me over the center zone, but I actually don't think he gains very much value fighting over that. Also, his Blooded being lined up with water against Nords is not something you want to do. My army pretty much ignores that rule. I just kind of get a huge advantage from it. It doesn't come up often in this game. I think a Tontorr loses a clash once and still does everything it needed to do. Chosen of Conquest, gonna push hard on that flank. So I have a choice here, and that choice is overload and fight the Chosen, or ignore that flank. I'm gonna have to do that for one of two units, right? I either have to overload and fight against Chosen of Conquest, or against Thunder Riders. And in this case, I choose to fight Chosen of Conquest. The reason for that is that Chosen of Conquest are significantly faster. Their ability to triple march or reform and double march just enables them to get around the board a lot more effectively. So they're something that I have to deal with, whereas the Thunder Riders, I can kind of just let them roam around and kill stuff and get ahead on victory points to gain enough advantage that they won't kill enough on their own. So I do this. I expect that he will either go into the Trolls and kill them, or go into the Fenrir and kill them, exposing flanks. And if he exposes the flank to Trolls, I feel really good about that. He has to like reform. He would have to reform Inspire Clash to do significant damage to the Trolls. So he doesn't really want to eat those flank swings. And if he uses all those actions, then he gets charged in the front by Flurry Fenrir. So I feel pretty good about this. I expect him to charge the Trolls. I should survive. And then that just gives me a bunch of advantage. He loses significant numbers of actions, ultimately, is the whole game plan here. So if you'll notice how I use my reinforcement line and all my units are angled, this means that all of his charges put him in awkward, like, board states, awkward positioning. So that is one of the big advantages of being a Nord player. Like, the Stalkers get to go up very, very far, and you get to use the reinforcement line for your significant number of mediums onto. I score the outside zone with my Fenrir, because, they're good at the game, and that's obviously what happens. And then I get to bring in all except one of my mediums. I choose not to bring in my Shaman Raiders. I made them medium with Captain because I felt like I really just didn't gain much value out of them being on the board sooner in this game. And I wanted them to be able to come on later and threaten more, like, safely threaten zones. I'm very good at Conquest here, and I always remember to take up the turn counter when it's the new turn. I don't at all tunnel vision, get very excited to build my deck. So as you can see, his deployment here is very wide. We have an impassable terrain between the Blooded and the Chosen. That means those Chosen can really only do one thing. I'm going to be able to kill this objective marker. Maybe the Raiders will fail a charge or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But eventually that objective marker is going to die. There's not really much they can do about it. And his Blooded could theoretically threaten the blue objective marker, but due to Vanguard on the Sea Jotnar and I'm Vanguarding the other Trolls again this turn, those Blooded are not safe if they go into that zone. So my main plan here is to make sure that I have 3 available scoring zones, and he has 2 available scoring zones. Then, if I can overload one of those zones, then I can score 2 and he can only score 1. Even if the game gets to a later point, I should have enough of a victory point advantage that even if I'm tabled, he has to chew through the center objective, and start trying to score. And you'll watch that play like develop more as this game goes on. There are a lot of times where I could make a choice to do damage to a more dangerous unit, and I choose to go kill Blooded because I'm ahead on points. I have an advantage. He has to bust into my castle, and he has to have enough things to actually score after he does that. So one of the biggest advantages I can gain is removing his ability to score as the game progresses. Also, against WoD, one of the best things that you can do is just remove their chant tokens. Their whole mechanic relies on activating regiments, and if you can remove a weaker regiment, even if it doesn't feel as good of a value play, you're nerfing their army rule, and that really adds up. I might win priority here. I don't remember. We'll see. I rolled a 3. Bryan rolled 1. So Bryan has priority. Or I guess I did. I don't know. Maybe he flipped a character and it was off screen. I go with Raiders. I remove the broken condition and I charge and just go and impact. And I'm trying to not end up like overlapping the marker. We get our 1 damage in, which is important because that means we can kill it with the bow shots from the Stalkers later in the turn. That was my only early turn activation. It kind of enabled me to so I put the Blooded next in case the Raiders did fail that charge again. That way the Blooded could rally his Stalkers and I could shoot and then charge, trying to get the impacts off the Blooded to hopefully finish off the objective marker. Because I really wanted to kill the objective marker and score this turn. This is also when I noticed that when I deployed the Stalkers, I didn't put the Blooded on the correct side of the unit, and I complain about this probably enough to make Bryan never want to play me again, because I am very mad at myself for that mistake. And it doesn't make a huge difference, as you'll watch, because I commit the Jotnar to that zone anyway. But, those are mistakes that some games they will make a really big difference, and they're things that you want to be aware of. So this is me shooting down the objective marker. And, yeah. Now I'm, helping him we're measuring out the threat of the Jotnar's volley, because he doesn't want to take free shots from it. So he needs to be slightly behind the 29-inch mark from directly where the Jotnar can come on. We hem and haw over this decision a little bit. I think Bryan ultimately decides to just hang back because he doesn't really want to get to a place where I can triple march the Jotnar and then immediately charge into him the next turn. I pick up my conning gear because we thought about it long enough that I actually forgot that he was still moving a unit. Yeah, we nudge it a little bit, but we agree that he's outside of 29, so I'm going to not even attempt that play. Oh yeah, we remember that was deadly ground, so we retroactively roll it. Yeah, so the two wheat fields are broken ground and obscuring terrain. The forests are obscuring hindering, and the water is simply water. And the two I guess, I don't know, totems are impassable. Fenrir, I'm not in range to threaten here, even with a reform, and that's really what I want to do. So I'm mostly sad because I can't actually do what I want to do. So I end up moving these up and reforming them because I'm expecting his Chosen of Conquest to go into the Fenrir. And this pushes his Chosen of Conquest into the front arc of my Stalkers so that I can shoot. In addition to making them a little bit more vulnerable to the flank charge from Fenrir and trolls, and making sure that those trolls would be fighting inside the zone. It's a pretty minor, it looks like kind of a minor choice, but I'm trying to goad him into charging the Fenrir, and so that we will be doing the fighting with all of our stands in the zone. So as I'm able to start chewing through him, I can gain advantage. This also allows me to run the Sea Jotnar up there. And the combination of Sea Jotnar and Trolls is likely to win me that zone. And even if it means that I'm not scoring the center. And I was hoping, wouldn't expect that. We bring the other Trolls on. Oh, I don't know why I did that, but I think I waffle on this decision a bunch of times, and I end up bringing the Trolls on the left flank. Oh, I realized that I drew an Ugr card and not in fact a Troll card. So I bring some Ugr on here. This also plays into, if those Chosen Conquest charge these Fenrir, then I have a pretty good chance of being able to charge them in the front with Trolls in the flank, piggybacking off of the Prophecy Unfulfilled rule, getting that +2 inches. So I probably should have had the Fenrir slightly further back than I did to make that charge a little safer, but I didn't pre-measure it, and that's a mistake, but a relatively minor one. So he chants Conquest Tier 3, and he goes into the Trolls here. He marches his 8, and he wants to charge Clash, but he doesn't have a banner, and he would need a 4, and he doesn't want to risk ending his turn, so he just goes for the March charge. That was definitely closer than I thought it was going to be. Oh, yeah, and then some stuff bumps because it's Tabletop Simulator, and it's fun. Skip forward here to save us some TTS stuff. So we get that adjusted, and then Bryan hits with a bunch of impacts. I make a bunch of saves on 2s. I believe I end up taking a net 6 from this. And those Trolls have not yet activated this turn, so I just put a marker on them for 6 wounds, because they're going to come back. And this is one of the reasons I like Trolls. They're holding that flank up. They're holding those Chosen of Conquest in that position. They're unlikely to die from an Inspire Clash from them on the next turn, and they're going to heal the damage from the impacts, which basically anything else would be dead. And with Chosen of Conquest, in this case, they go Inspire Clash and would get to charge into Fenrir. So Trolls surviving that, healing these 6 now, and then being able to survive on a future turn actually makes a really big difference in how much I gain. They're a speed bump, but they're a 2-turn speed bump. So the Blooded move up here. And he decides to go for the front. He just March charges into the Fenrir. He's trying to prevent me from... those Fenrir have already activated, and he's trying to prevent me from, dogpiling onto his Chosen Conquest, which is smart. I waffle a little bit here on whether or not I should add the stand back, because a full stand was killed from healing. So because I'm able to bring it back, I could bring it back this way, which gives him more attacks for his Chosen of Conquest. And I think I end up leaving them off center. You're not forced to bring it in. I guess I don't leave it. I don't remember. I don't remember if I like walk this back or not. I know we talk about it a bunch. Yeah, so I put them in like this. I refill into the to the right, enabling, which actually is a mistake because he gets more Chosen of Conquest stands attacking, and it makes my trolls more likely to die. I actually forgot I did that, and I'm kind of mad at myself watching the replay because that's a pretty big error. I decided to just zoom into this zone. I really just want to score it this turn, and if I get to go first and charge into the Blooded there, I kind of hold up his Thunder Riders and am continuing like my zone dominance. And I feel like that's pretty good. I don't believe I stack trolls first, though. There's just too much going on the next turn. I have a lot of choices with Jotnar. This is one of those times where I'm mad at myself for the Blooded play. Had he been on the correct side of the unit, I likely would have volleyed without take aim, and then marched in directly behind the Raiders to score with the Blooded. And that would allow my Jotnar to be a little bit more to the left and actually in the water, which is pretty bad for both his Blooded units if they try to fight me. And maybe his Thunder Riders like go hard into the Jotnar, but that's not bad for me either. It's also possible I would have had the Jotnar on the right side. But because scoring was so important, this is kind of the only place he could go, and he's a little bit jammed up behind the marker. I'm just overall not very happy with his positioning. It's not really fun to blunder a 240-point unit, but we have enough board control that sort of deal. Yeah, we're both building decks here. It's a little intense. Skip forward a couple seconds. So I'm trying to remember what I was actually thinking here. I heavily considered just going first with trolls, but I really wanted those Fenrir to go into the Blooded. I believe my first card was actually Raiders, because with Prophecy Unfulfilled, I had a free charge into Blooded, and I expected to kill enough of them that I might be able to free up the Fenrir to be able to charge into the Chosen of Conquest. And also, then the Raiders would be in the way of the Tontorr, preventing Tontorr from charging more effectively. I think that is probably the correct play here. My second card should definitely be Trolls, though, because Trolls on either side are both really valuable swings. I either get all of the attacks into the Chosen of Conquest, but I believe I made my second card a Fenrir, and looking back, that's just a mistake. So he does a March Charge here, and he goes into the dangerous terrain and then charges out of the dangerous terrain, so he has to make 12 dice rolls. And he ends up failing 2 of these, which turns into 4 wounds because he's cavalry, but it's a March Charge from a 6 block of Thunder Riders, or 5 Thunder Riders plus a Chieftain. We roll this for the camera, but I'll tell you, it's not good for trolls. If you have a 170-point unit and somebody dumps 500 points into its face, you get picked up real quick. This is actually closer than it should have been, though. He only does 12 hits. And if I roll a little bit hot on my ones, I actually have a reasonable chance of surviving. I don't, though, so I take 11, and I take another 5, or I say 5 of the 11, so I've taken 14 before I go into the tramples, and then the tramples kill me. It's unlikely to survive it. Trample's a good rule, but at least it was close. So yeah, I go in with Raiders. I actually forgot about Prophecy Unfulfilled when I rolled that. Well, sort of. I didn't measure that I was within 8, but we do a couple of impacts and then a bunch of flurry attacks. Raiders just do excellent work. They're always overperforming for me. Really important thing here is that we break. So we end up leaving those blooded on 1 wound, which was pretty sad. Like, I kind of expected it, but it was still pretty sad. So this, I believe, is this is the Chosen Conquest into the Trolls. So I end up taking a total of 13 here. I take... and I survive on 3 wounds, and like that's really big. It's expected. I really shouldn't have built towards them. I gave him 4 extra Chosen of Conquest attacks that I really didn't need to, and that's a mistake. And those are the types of mistakes that really can swing games. I was lucky that it didn't in this case, but it still can. So I activate Fenrir, and I end up going with the Fenrir that are pushed forward, and I clash without inspiring. So I have 13 attacks here. I do 7 hits. I only have to do 1 wound. So we get them, and that enables me to move over here and reform so that all 3 stands are in the zone. We kind of have to agree on this. Like, we check it a little bit later, or I could like reform on extra time, but it is a little difficult with these markers. We agree that all the stands are in the zone. That's the important part. Because right now I'm really trying to stop the Chosen of Conquest from causing problems. I don't want to be in line of sight of the Tontorr. So I actually end up reforming differently and only have 2 stands in the zone. But I'm within 9.4 with the Ugr and Vargyr Lord. And I make sure to line up so that the right side, or so that the Fenrir are not blocking me from making this charge. And with Prophecy Unfulfilled, I should be able to make the charge fairly easily. I draw my Troll card while he's moving his Blooded. That's bad form. My Blooded makes 7 swings after rallying and do like 3 hits. And he's on 3s, so we might take a little bit of damage, but he chooses to make no damage, which is fine. We weren't expecting a lot out of them anyway. I think he's planning his chance. He wasn't expecting those Blooded to die where they did, so it messed up his chant plan a little bit. And that's good. That's one of the reasons that it's always very good to take priority kills on Wadroon units, because the way they have to plan their chants, you can really mess up a whole turn, and a unit without chance is significantly weaker. So understanding the way your opponent's mechanics work, and then playing in ways that, like, 2 choices might be similar in overall value, but create like this extra meta value in that they kind of mess with what your opponent wants to do. And this is one of those cases. This is we're going to enjoy some tabletop simulator stuff where we bump into a tree a bunch of times. We know that they basically want where they want to be, and we just kind of talk through it and then put them where they need to go. I draw Blooded, it doesn't do anything. He draws a Chieftain, it makes a card. I draw a Shaman, it's off the table. He draws a Chieftain, it doesn't do anything. I draw Trolls that are no longer alive. And then I draw, I believe those are Stalkers, yeah. I hem and haw over those way too much, honestly. I end up just like walking into range and shooting. And this is one of those cases. You just get whatever chip damage into a Tontorr that you can get. I roll horribly, I do 2 hits, and then I think the Blooded does like 2 more hits or whatever. And he ends up taking 3 wounds. And I believe, like, you know, it has 26 wounds. You gotta hit it a lot of times. He has to line up on the center of me. One of those stands is just barely touching the edge of the water. So he loses. He's affected by water here. It's not very relevant, though. The trample is going to do all of the necessary damage. It only is relevant because I can't die to the impact hits, or I'm less likely to be able to die to the impact hits. And I don't want him to charge, impact, kill me, and then have me die to trample. Oh, so the water sometimes makes models on Tabletop Simulator skid. So, and there's no way to fix it. So you remake the model and place it there. It is an imperfect game, and we look forward to a better solution. We're kind of trying to remember exactly where they were. It's not perfectly positioned. I think it ends up in a slightly better position than it was supposed to be in, but it's not hugely relevant. We know it was touching the marker or the water, and it's mostly fine. I draw Ugr here, and I'm 9.4 away. Due to Prophecy Unfulfilled, I need a 2. Which I get because of Prophecy Unfulfilled. Normally, I would have to impact a little bit more centralized there, but because of the position of my Fenrir, I actually can't maximize more, so I get pushed more in that direction. I should have considered that when I was moving the Fenrir, and I didn't, and that was a mistake, because I would have really liked to have 4 Ugr attack instead of 1 Ugr attack from the supports. We're just rolling some dice here. I do some impact hits, and I'm gonna do some clashing. Don't remember the end result. And then I clash. So we did 3 from the impact hits. And then I think the net result is like 4 more from the clash. It was a pretty uninspired clash, honestly. I don't have enough movement to move the Ugr past, so I just move them right to the butt of the Stalkers. I really want to get as close to that Tontorr as possible so that I can make a charge into it. The Conning Gear card is a Vargyr Lord card. I don't actually have one made up yet, so. I dueled here, and I just die for it. So it was a pretty bad. It was a bad play. I don't know. I had regen. I had a bunch of attacks. Scions are relatively weak defensively, and I thought if I was able to kill it, it might prevent his actions on the next turn. He might have a harder time pulling off his full Conquest chant. But I just died, and am sad that I made the duel. I wasn't considering that he had evasion 2 from the Conquest tier 2 chant. That was just on me. Yeah, I hem and haw over the Sea Jotnar a lot. I don't like any of my plays with Sea Jotnar here. I think the play that I would have liked the most was March charging the far back blooded, the ones that are just like straight in front of me, or March charging into the Tontorr. That way the Tontorr is fighting in the water, and I'm fighting it, right? So if I March charge into that Tontorr, I'm engaged with it. It's in water. I might do some damage. The problem is, in order to make it, I'd still need like a 4 here, and I decide not to go for that because then I'm just opening myself up to the blooded. It still probably was the right play. I think just trying to March charge that Tontorr was the right play. I'm kicking myself here. For not having these Fenrir going a little bit earlier, because they should have charged into the back of this Tontorr. Actually, I might be getting lost. That might be a different turn. Yeah, that is a different turn. That's next turn. So yeah, we have these 3 Fenrir go. I go through the effort of like removing these stands, and like things lock a bunch. TTS is not the best, so I have to like reform and widen myself so that I can do a straight in charge to charge into these Chosen of Conquest. And I do, and thankfully this is the flurry unit. I do fail 2 of my dangerous terrains, but because I'm Nords, I only take 2 wounds from that, so I don't actually lose a full stand. This comes into play later. 11 hits, pretty good damage into Chosen. The fact that they're just 3+ all day because of the evasion 3 makes one of the best counters in the game being something that just does a lot of base hits. And Fenrir are exceptionally good at just doing a lot of base hits. So now we've won this zone from him, which is going to be really relevant. Like, fighting over a zone and scoring it, this is why I decided to dogpile into the Chosen of Conquest. They're significantly faster and more mobile than the Thunder Riders are. So we wanted to make sure that we won that side. And I'm gaining a lot of a lead here, right? Like, I'm going to be very far ahead on victory points. And if I can kill everything on the board that isn't Thunder Riders, they can only score 1 zone a turn. Even if he tables me, there's only so many victory points that 1 unit can score. So I just moved some Fenrir into the water here. They're in a really good place to threaten either of those 2 blooded units, and I feel like pretty good about them. Then I bring in these Raiders. I think about this a lot, and I decide that if his Thunder Riders want to take themselves out of the game for 2 more turns by chasing down some Raiders with a Shaman in them, I cannot lose the game if he does that. So ultimately, I push them far to the other side, and he has to just abandon them, but that's not good either because they end up stealing a zone from him. I make a mistake here. It's not huge because I have Vanguard, but these should probably be coming on the board like 2 wide just to make that wheel significantly easier. But I'm not really trying to go very far. I want to be within 10 inches of the zone so I can walk into it. Again, these are Captain Raiders, so they score. And I want to be as far away from the rest of the action as possible. If he charges them here, he's going to have to like turn around and then slowly walk back, and he has to deal with like getting around this effigy. And I'm still in range of like double marching into the zone. So I gain a lot of value there. He does score 1 zone, but I score 2, which is another like huge boon for me. Now, I definitely go all Fenrir cards here. I want to just, I want Fenrir going. I make a mistake, and I put an Ugr before the second Fenrir. I really should have just gone Fenrir into Ugr. And actually, probably Fenrir into Sea Jotnar into Ugr. Or maybe Fenrir, Sea Jotnar, Fenrir. But it's really important that, like, I'm doing stuff with all my Fenrir right now. And I don't do that, and I'm really not sure what I was thinking, but that is a mistake. And that actually opens him up to have a better shot in this game than I feel like he should have from this board position. I'm very far ahead on points. I'm ahead on attrition. I can deal with... He just doesn't have very many units. Once I kill those Chosen of Conquest, like, yeah, there's a Tontorr and some Thunder Riders running around, but he's got to chew through so many units to kill those things. I'm going to get at least one of them, and he's going to run out of victory points. He's just going to not be able to score enough to win. And I just misplay this stack. I can't figure out what I was thinking at the time, but I wasn't thinking the right thing. I was excited because I rolled a 2 and then I lost priority. So he reform charges with the Tontorr into some Ugr. And Tabletop Simulator breaks, as it does. We shrink these guys, whatever. So, everything breaks again. It snaps them back into place. It's just a little wonky. So he goes in here. He moves over so that he's an inch from the Fenrir. Because it doesn't change the numbers, so he should charge in a way that like causes the least movement. Charges in. He does some damage. I think I take all of them. And then there's like the 10 tramples. I'm pretty sure he just kills the whole unit. Yeah, he definitely kills the whole unit, because that's what creates a problem for me. Yeah, so they die, and that's frustrating. And I do go with Fenrir here. And I believe I go with the Fenrir on the left side of the board, and I just decide the correct thing to do is to kill this unit of Blooded. Those Fenrir have Flurry, they get to charge just right in the front, and that's not going to work out well for the Blooded. It's 13 hits. On average, they should take like 9 of these, and then they should take another 4.5, so they should die. But he rolled very bad on Resolve and died worse. Then we reform so that we can more easily charge his other Blooded next turn, or just, I don't know, have to reform less. Doesn't really matter. I just like using my rules. His Chosen go. The character finishes off the Trolls by himself. This is actually probably a mistake. Trolls maybe should have gone first here, but I was expecting him to go first with Chosen of Conquest and kill the Trolls, so I didn't want to put them first, but had I done that, I don't know. My outlook here is it's very important that these Chosen of Conquest end their turn still stuck there, like they don't get the value out of their third action. All they get to do is Inspire Clash. And that actually does happen. So we have this one Fenrir stand. And I forget about it going later into the turn. So it's alive on like 2 wounds, 1 wound, something like that. I don't have any trolls left, so these are Stalkers. I can see the Tontorr, and because one stand can see, everybody can see, so we just shoot. So I mess around with a lot of different options with these guys. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And ultimately, I end up just shooting at Tontorr. And he fails some saves, he takes some damage. It's not a big deal. In retrospect, I don't know. It still might have been right. I think I probably should have just walked forward and shot the Blooded. But I definitely shouldn't have had the soccer card there at all. Like, they should have been much, much later in the turn. All 3 Fenrir should have gone earlier. Definitely this Fenrir unit should have been charging the flank of that Tontorr. This I didn't see, though. Frankly, this charge was just, like, significantly closer than I thought it was. Yeah, it's just over 10, or it ended up being just inside of 10. And I think he rolls a 6, so I don't think it mattered. But he might not have gone for it otherwise. I really expected those Raiders to force him to do something else, or like he was going to turn around and charge the Fenrir, which we talked about it later, and turning around and charging the Fenrir is actually probably the correct play, because he's never really going to have another good chance to get at them, and it's very hard for Thunder Riders to come back from the scoring if I can just kind of run around him the way I'm able to at this point in the game. So yeah, he goes into Jotnar and obliterates it. And because of that, I did nothing with my Jotnar that entire game, and I felt really bad about it. This is where I'm really annoyed at myself. These Uger are charging the flank of this Tontorr, but we should have had +2 on that roll. We're within 10, and we rolled a 4, so we got there. But we definitely should have had 2 more on that roll, because Fenrir should have been into the flank of the Tontorr. And getting Prophecy unfulfilled, which Order of Activations is extremely important with Nords, and those types of mistakes add up, but in this case, I got away with one. So we do a few impacts, we do a clash. This clash is pretty good, like, obviously, because he's saving on 1. So of course he does save 3 of them, which made me very sad at the time. It actually makes me a little bit sad even watching the replay. His Tontorrs are just so tanky. But it doesn't end up mattering. The Fenrir are able to take him down, so all's well that ends well. Yeah, the Blooded look at going into the zone, but I remind Bryan that because I have the objective, he doesn't actually get to score it. I think I don't remember exactly what he does after that. I believe he turns them to fight Fenrir. Oh, nope, he just goes into the zone anyway. It's like, well, I gotta be in it. Those Fenrir charge. And these ones do not have Flurry, but they do have Opportunist, so it's kind of the same. That's another 14 hits. Another 7 wounds, which kills it exactly. I messed this up. I was like, get 3 in the zone, and then we adjust it later. Not that the points really mattered. So at this point, I actually think I'm going to get tabled. And then I remember that there is a Fenrir alive here. So we're talking about it, and we just agree on this because that was our plan. He only has 2 things in the zone, and I would obviously get 3 things in the zone. And I score the other zone because of the Raiders, and then we remember that this Fenrir stand is there, so they do actually get a turn. And they do 2 wounds, which turns into 3 wounds, so they're pretty proud of themselves. And I don't actually remember what I do here either. The correct play for me is to probably once again just stack a bunch of Fenrir. Because basically no matter what he does, that ends up being correct for me. The Blooded in the middle of the board are in a pretty good spot, but if I charge them in the flank with Fenrir, or in the back with Fenrir, they will definitely die. So he clashes. He actually rolls horribly here because he doesn't inspire. And I die Exacties. And if I hadn't taken that damage from the broken terrain earlier, I would have actually lived. So it works out for me. So he does that. He reforms. We take the opportunity of our unengaged units to like fix his unit. And then we end up like making a new one because Tabletop Simulator does things. We put those guys back right on the zone, and then these guys charge in. Oh my god. It is not a perfect platform. So, again, a lot of agreement about what's happening. I just save 4 out of 5 impacts, and then I make my resolve. And I just take 1 whole wound on these Fenrir, and it's mostly hilarious, but that was pretty lucky. So I thought I was going to lose the game when the other Fenrir existed, but that changed a lot, or when I thought that the other Fenrir didn't exist, because him losing that action is like really important. I do draw Fenrir first here, and I believe I go for the Blooded. I think I'm able to wheel slightly to get it to within 8. Yeah, or within 9, so I need a 2. And then I choose to roll that. And I get there. And this is bad news bears for these Blooded. I do 13 hits. I believe they take 9 of them, and then having to reroll resolves on 2s means that they just eat all of the resolves. And so they die. And the Thunder Riders go, and they don't have any good plays here. This is where Bryan is frustrated himself for not killing the Fenrir last turn, though there would have been a Jotnar there, so it's still like not great. They managed to fail this double ones charge, but it's really not important. Like, if he kills those Raiders, if you can look at the victory points, like those, they're never getting back into the game if they're over there. Tabletop Simulator. We're going to just fast forward here a little bit because we talk about this a bunch, and then he ends up over here. These Fenrir do some attacks and do some damage to Chosen Conquest. And then the Fenrir just like end up double marching sideways. Now we draw the dead Fenrir card. Or the Ugr end up just like double marching sideways so that they would be able to charge next turn because there's no way they can get past their own Fenrir right now. I mess with the idea of like trying to reform them and do this charge, but it doesn't fit. So we just double march sideways so that we're lined up to charge on the following turn. They just reform and take some pot shots. It's better to take the shots here than to like move into effective range. I end up just being like, all right, I'm just going to be straight up here. I mean, this is not irrelevant, but it's not very important. Like, at this point, there's no way that those Chosen of Conquest that are alive on, I believe, 2 wounds are going to survive this game, and I simply have too many units. The Thunder Chieftain and the Riders just can't be in enough places at enough times. There's just no way that they're ever going to come back. I simply have too many victory points to lose the game from here. I hem and haw over this more than I probably should. I end up just like reforming and moving back. Like, he was within March charge range. After messing with it a bit, they got a little bit out of position, so I ended up like just moving them a little further forward. I'm just stacking Fenrir on top. They want to go first in all of these fights right now. I lose priority. He rallies, inspires, and clashes. I believe he almost kills the Fenrir. He's down to 2 stands, so like that's 3 hits, and then the character does 6, so we have 9 hits, which probably kills us. Oh no, we roll lights out on 2, so we take 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're alive, but so Fenrir go, and we just reform and flank charge with these ones. We're within 7, so we just charge easily. That's my marker, so it's a lot easier to make this charge. And this is one of those times where like he's going to take a lot of damage. Like, he takes 14 hits. He doesn't have War 3 up for his chance, so he's just defense 3. And he's not fearless, so he actually just takes a lot of damage. He ends up taking 14 wounds from that charge clash. These other Fenrir just rally and clash. They don't have flurry. They whiff completely. I rolled it thinking they did, and then I realized they were the one without flurry. He goes for a reform here because he would have only 1 stand, and Tabletop Simulator decided that thing should ice skate on its front corner. So we copied it and made a new one. it has decisions and it makes them. They're different decisions than I would likely make, but, it's me. So these attacks are on 2s. He still does pretty well with 5 hits. The Chieftain can just roll together because he's the same. And then I believe I died at the trample here. Oh, no, I guess I don't. Yeah, he's only trample 6, so I end up alive with a wound on me. I take 9 total from the whole shebang. Ugr charge in. We have 6 impact hits. We only have to do a couple more wounds. We roll out some dice here. This is mostly cleanup. So they die. Stalkers go. They're just going to take aim and volley. Oh, I guess I should have just taken aim and volley. I thought about this far more than I should have. Like, this game's already over. I think we paused and actually were like just chatting about what happened a little bit. Because I spent a lot of time on those blooded and it did not change the outcome of the game at all. Arguably, the right play might have literally just been a charge there because the blooded's attacks are so good. But he did have Blessed up at this point from his Fanatic of War, so I didn't think that was actually very good. I actually think about making this charge. I fail it. I move 2 inches. I probably shouldn't charge there, but I was getting bloodthirsty. We call the game here. Obviously, there's not really any reason to play it out. If he goes first, he has no chant markers, or maybe he has a war. I don't know. He goes first. He kills the Fenrir. He reforms. He gets shot and/or charged by 2 things. And we still have Ugr and a Fenrir. Ugr turn around and start going towards the center, and Fenrir chill where they're at. There's just really no way for him to come back from this. The biggest thing here, like, I really felt like I was in a bad place until we realized that one Fenrir stand was actually still alive. Because that Fenrir stand being alive enabled the whole game to really, like, there's a whole action that he doesn't get. Because on this turn, go back here to where he loses that action. So when this is being set up, I expected him to just reform charge clash and guaranteed kill those Fenrir. But because he was unable to do that, I got a full swing from the Fenrir in, and that made a pretty big difference. It is possible that him charging and killing the Fenrir and then getting flanked by the Ugr might have still been enough, but it's certainly less assured than him doing basically nothing to the Fenrir and taking a bunch in the face. So this is pretty much how I feel like you have to play against Wadroon in general. You kind of plink away at the Tontorr and hope to take it down. It's going to kill some stuff. It's 300 points at better. I try to avoid... Like, I did what I could to avoid and, like, redirect these Thunder Riders as much as possible. They're not very fast, so you can actually force them to March Charge and then just kind of be sitting out there doing nothing for a bit. I really misplayed the Sea Jotnar this game, and I think a large part of that was because I was on tilt because I misplayed the Blooded. If he had just been on the other side of the unit... like, we would have had a much better situation here. Like, he just could have been on the left side of his unit instead of the right side of his unit, and then he would have been fighting over the zone the whole game. Oh well. Mistakes were made. But overall, I don't know, hopefully this was a good example of, like, how you can use your like massive amount of board control and spacing with Nords. I used Prophecy Unfulfilled multiple times this game, and I messed it up multiple times this game. It's a very, very powerful rule, but it's not the easiest thing to think about and use. Hopefully this showed like what trolls can do. Obviously, they cannot stand up to Thunder Riders, but they ended up taking... They took 6 from impacts here, healed them up, and then were able to survive a clash. I made a mistake even giving him additional attacks into the trolls there, because I was like trying to set it up for Fenrir to do things, and frankly, I should have just left them where they were, healed the one stand that was hanging off the edge back, so that he lost a couple of attacks, and then been like, well, if I die, I die. I'm gonna lose that stand again, right? I'm gonna be still taking attacks from a full unit of Chosen of Conquest. But yeah, I don't know. That's the game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and until next time, remember to like and subscribe.